Iran is not collapsing because of war. It's collapsing because it's running out of water. Right now, millions of people in Tehran are facing a future with empty taps. No water. No system. No way out. And this could trigger something much bigger than anyone expected. Across Tehran, people are no longer living normally. They are waiting. Waiting for water. Faucets don't run anymore. Pipes don't carry water. Only air. And the sound of pressure collapsing inside the system. Families are storing every drop they can find. Plastic containers. Buckets. Anything. And when water finally arrives, crowds push. They fight. They panic. Because this is no longer about comfort. This is about survival. This is happening in a country that was never supposed to look like this. Iran is not a weak state. It has one of the largest militaries in the Middle East. A powerful missile program. And ambitions that go far beyond its borders. For decades, it has projected strength. Power. Control. Influence. But behind that image, something was quietly breaking. Year after year, the country was consuming more water than it could replace. Draining rivers. Emptying reservoirs. Destroying its own reserves. And now, that hidden crisis is no longer hidden. It's exploding. This is not a drought. Droughts are temporary. They come, and they go. This is something else. This is collapse. Iran is running out of water at a rate it cannot recover from. Every year. It takes more from the ground than nature can give back. Aquifers are collapsing. Reservoirs are dying. Rivers are disappearing. This is not a seasonal crisis. This is a system breaking in real time. And once that system breaks, there is no quick fix. No emergency solution. No way to reverse it overnight. And when water disappears, daily life disappears with it. Homes don't function. Cities don't function. There is no water to cook. No water to clean. No water to live. Hospitals begin to struggle. Sanitation systems start to fail. And slowly, a modern city begins to break down. Not from bombs, but from something far more basic. People start changing their behavior. They ration. They store. They panic. Because when the system stops delivering water, every individual is on their own. And that's when order starts to crack. And this is where the crisis becomes something much bigger. Because water is not just a civilian problem. It's a military one. In modern warfare, a single soldier needs between 15 to 20 liters of water every day. Not just to drink, but to survive heat. To stay focused. To keep fighting. Now scale that up. Hundreds of thousands of troops. That means millions of liters of water. Every single day. And if that water isn't there, nothing works. Soldiers can't move. Vehicles overheat. Medical systems fail. Even the most advanced army becomes useless. And Iran's military doctrine is built on long wars. Wars of endurance. But endurance requires one thing above all else. Water. Without it, there is no endurance. Only collapse. So how do you supply that much water, in a war? You have to move it. Truck by truck. Convoy after convoy. Thousands of vehicles carrying nothing but water. And that's where the real problem begins. Because in military terms, this is a logistics nightmare. Water is heavy. And unlike fuel or ammunition, it cannot be reduced. It has to be delivered. Constantly. That means long, exposed supply lines. Fuel trucks. Ammo trucks. And now, water tankers. All moving together. Slow. Heavy. Easy to track. In modern warfare, that's a perfect target. Drones can spot them. Satellites can track them. And once they're seen, they don't survive for long. Destroy just a few of these tankers, and an entire unit can be cut off. No resupply. No movement. No survival. Not because of enemy fire, but because the water never arrived. But this crisis goes beyond strategy. Beyond logistics. It comes down to something much simpler. The human body. A soldier can carry weapons. He can endure stress. He can survive combat. But without water, none of that matters. Within just a few hours, dehydration begins to affect focus. Decisions slow down. Reactions get weaker. After a day, physical performance drops sharply. And after just a few days, the body starts to shut down. No training can stop it. No discipline can override it. Because this is not a tactical limit. It's a biological one. And once that limit is reached, there is no fight left to continue. Now imagine this crisis, during a war. Because that's when everything breaks faster. Modern infrastructure depends on one thing. Power. Electricity runs the pumps. It moves the water. It keeps the system alive. But in a real conflict, power grids are among the first targets. Missile strikes. Cyber attacks. System failures. And when the power goes down, the water stops. No pumps. No pressure. No supply. Cities don't lose water slowly. They lose it all at once. And once that happens, hospitals go dark. Sanitation collapses. Entire districts shut down. What you get is not just a shortage. It's a chain reaction. Energy fails. Water fails. The city fails. And behind the front lines, millions of civilians are left with nothing. No water. No system. No stability. And this is where the crisis turns into something even more dangerous. Because now, it's no longer just about survival. It's about power. A country that once projected strength across the region is now facing a different reality. It cannot provide something as basic as water to its own capital. And when that happens, everything changes. Leverage disappears. Confidence collapses. And suddenly, a regional power starts looking vulnerable. There are already signs of this shift. Discussions about securing water from outside its borders. Negotiations over shared rivers. Dependence, where there was once dominance. For a state that built its identity on self-reliance. This is more than a crisis. It's a strategic humiliation. Because the moment a country cannot sustain itself, it begins to lose control of its own future. But the most immediate threat is not coming from outside the country. It's coming from within. Because when water disappears, people don't stay calm. They react. At first, it's frustration. Long lines. Empty containers. Waiting for hours. Then it escalates. Pushing. Shouting. Fighting over access. And eventually, order starts to break. Protests begin to form. Crowds gather in the streets. Not for politics. Not for ideology. But for something far more basic. Water. And that makes it far more dangerous. Because you cannot negotiate with thirst. You cannot suppress it with force. The more pressure builds, the more unstable everything becomes. And for the government, this creates a nightmare scenario. Control the population. Or prepare for collapse. And this is where the situation becomes almost impossible to manage. Because now, the crisis is happening on two fronts. Outside, there is the risk of conflict. But inside, the system is already under pressure. And the same forces that are supposed to defend the country are now being pulled in a different direction. Security forces are no longer just preparing for external threats. They are being forced to manage internal instability. Crowds. Protests. Rising tension across major cities. And that creates a dangerous trade-off. Every resource used to control the streets is a resource not used to defend the borders. Every unit redirected inward weakens the system outward. This is the kind of pressure no government wants to face. Because you cannot fully control both. And the longer the crisis continues, the harder that choice becomes. Until eventually, something has to give. But here's the part that changes everything. This crisis was not inevitable. And it was not just caused by nature. It was built over years. Through decisions that prioritized control over sustainability. Water was redirected. Projects were approved. Massive infrastructure was built. Not always for efficiency, but for influence. Dams without long-term planning. Agricultural policies that drained resources. Systems designed to maximize short-term output, while ignoring long-term survival. And behind all of it, power structures that benefited from expansion. From construction. From control over resources. The more the system grew, the more fragile it became. Until eventually, it reached a point where it could no longer sustain itself. This is not just environmental collapse. It's the result of a system that consumed its own foundation. There are real examples of how this system failed. One of the most well-known cases involves large-scale dam construction. Over the past decades, hundreds of dams were built across the country. They were meant to control water, store it, distribute it more efficiently. But many of them created the opposite effect. Rivers that once flowed freely were cut off. Ecosystems collapsed. Water that should have sustained entire regions was trapped, mismanaged, or lost. In some areas, over-extraction of groundwater made things even worse. Aquifers were drained faster than they could recover. Land began to sink. And once that happens, there is no going back. These are not isolated failures. They are part of a pattern. A system pushed beyond its limits. Until the damage became permanent. And the consequences don't stop here. Because when water disappears, it doesn't just take the present with it. It takes the future. Land that once supported agriculture turns dry. Dust begins to rise. Air quality gets worse. And over time, entire regions become harder to live in. Not because of war, but because the environment itself is changing. Slowly. Irreversibly. What was once a resource crisis becomes a long-term reality. A new normal, where recovery is no longer guaranteed. And every year that passes, the cost of fixing it gets higher, and the chances of fixing it get lower. What's happening here reveals something much bigger. Because this is not just about one country. It's about how power actually works. For decades, global power has been measured in visible terms. Military strength, economic output, technological capability. But beneath all of that, there is a more fundamental layer. Resources. Water. Energy. Food. The systems that sustain everything else. And when those systems begin to fail, traditional measures of power start to lose meaning. A country can have advanced weapons, but if it cannot sustain its population, or support its own infrastructure, that power becomes fragile. What we are seeing is a shift from visible strength to underlying resilience. And in that shift, the real question is no longer, how strong is a country? But, how long can it sustain itself? From the outside, Iran still looks powerful. A nation with weapons, influence, reach, like a fortress. Strong walls, high towers. But underneath, the foundation is weakening. Because that foundation is not built on steel. It's built on something far more fragile. Water. And when that foundation begins to disappear, everything above it becomes unstable. Like a castle built on sand. It may stand for a while. It may look strong. But the moment the base gives way, the collapse is inevitable. Not because of an external attack, but because the system could no longer support itself. This is not just news, this is how the world really works behind what you see. Subscribe to Politicus Global so you never miss the deepest analysis on power, war, and global geopolitics.